Welcome to Photo Geek Weekly, episode 146, recorded on May 6th of 2021. The Photo Geekery Show, as you know, if you've been listening to this already, and I am your host, Don Komarechka. We've got some great stories lined up, and I have one of my very favorite co-hosts. In fact, he is the man pushing the buttons behind the scenes to make this episode live right now if you are watching it live. If not, well, it will be on YouTube as well after the fact, because there will be an interesting opening for this episode. But I welcome as my guest host, Steve Brazel, to the show. Steve, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic, my friend. Thank you as always for having me. I love doing these live. I really, really do.
I do as well, and this one is so potent to do live. You know, something arrived today, and it is a box, and in that box is copies of my upcoming book, Macro Photography: The Universe at Our Feet. And it's not just any copies. This is some limited edition copies. I was hoping for a mix in the box of different types, but the other regular edition is coming tomorrow, so it doesn't count for this. This is the one that I've never seen before, and this is going to be a lot of fun to dig into this. And I start shipping things out hopefully on Monday when the big shipment on a big freight truck
exciting.
fills
I
my
am
garage.
so happy for you that, because this has been, with the pandemic and family and everything else, you know, this book project has been a project, to say the least. And you took the time and you went deeper and you went wider in what you were covering. And I've seen some PDF previews of it, and I am, and by the way, I ordered one as well. I didn't order the leather one because I'm stupid. I should have, but again,
right.
I'm anxious for the book, and mainly I'm just, when you posted the other day you were ready to have champagne, I was so happy for you.
It was wonderful. You know, I gotten some photos from the press, the printer. Things had, like, they were actively being bound. And so, like, there's two stages. Of course, it's got to go through the press system, and then you just have these big stacks of paper on skids or pallets, and then it gets bound into the final book. And I actually have a video that that my contact there had shot. It's a vertical video. It's a little shaky, but I do want to share that at some point as well. Not during the podcast. I'll make a list for the backers, or a posting for the backers that includes that. Once I have something in hand and I can do a personal thank you and include that in there as well. It's really cool, the machines, how they chop and align, and it's industrial magic behind the scenes. But
Wait,
we get to see the
Industrial
fruition.
Light and Magic? No, different company.
Not quite the same thing. But here we have a box. Before I open this up, though, Steve, it's been a while since I've had you on the podcast. What has been going on with you in that interim period? Usually you're on almost every other episode, and people love it that you're on. I gotta have you back on with that regularity in the future. But how has the last month treated you?
You know, I would argue I'm probably on more than people want to hear, but that's a completely different story. Everything is great, man. I'm just, you know, the pandemic has not been unusual for me because I live here, I work here, my normal job I do from this same room. So for me, it has not been, you know, hugely different what I've been doing. But I'm doing a lot of podcasting. I was just had a recording episode with our mutual friend Aunt Pruitt. That's going to air at the end of May. And just today, I've been really excited for this one because I started talking to Scott Kelby back in December, picking a shot and trying to find a time in his schedule. And we finally got it recorded. And the Scott Kelby episode of Behind the Shot, my podcast, I should mention, that came out today. And I had a blast with Scott. I had a blast with Ant. So that's just pretty much what I've been doing. And, you know, the critique show we just did live.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun as well. Yeah, and thank you for everybody in the chat. Gary Monroe's here and says, just came for the grand opening, hoping it's not a box of bricks. Well, Gary, I hope so too. I don't know what's inside this thing. It's heavy. So,
well, and what's interesting is Carl said that their internet connection is terrible. So the stream has stalled. I'm hoping it's still working for everybody. But the chat is still working. So that's good. You can at least chat.
Yeah. There it is. And Gary gives some advice to Carl. Thank you for that. And David, thanks for being here as well, even though you've got to run off for dinner. Let's not delay this. I'm going to shift my camera angle down a little bit. I might cut off my face a bit, but that's okay. I have here in this box. I've covered the shipping label so you don't get my address, but that's fine. And I have a fancy knife. This is actually a knife used for grafting trees. It's the closest thing I could find. So I get to open up this box. And this is going to be really painful for those listening to the audio version, but
you know what we should do though?
What should we do, Steve?
Don't actually open the lid yet. After you get it cut.
Yeah.
Just leave it ready to open after you get it cut. All right.
Well, it's ready.
All right, here we go.
What do you want?
Ready?
Ta-da! Oh, this is unexpected.
You don't. Wait a minute. You were serious. You don't actually know what's in here?
I was told this was the limited special edition, and in fact, that's what it says on the side of the box, special edition. It is not.
Interesting.
It's the regular edition in this box. So I had no idea that was going to be there. I was misinformed. That is the regular edition of the book that everybody that has pre-ordered a copy.
That's my book you're holding, probably.
Yeah, I can make this one yours, Steve, if you want. My fingerprints all over the pages. Yeah, I mean, my camera's a little bit hot on the one page there, but I assure you there's text on it. And the paper quality is thick. I'm not seeing any bleed through of like a very, very small amount. Like you can kind of see like the paper is so thick that a very dark image on one side is not going to show up on the other page. And that's one of the things you pay extra for in terms of, the paper thickness and quality therein. And
Gary actually said, wonders what the first sniff would be like.
Oh, it smells like new book, Gary. It totally, totally new book smell. Like images like this, I mean, it might not be coming through perfectly through a webcam and what have you, but the multitude of colors in this 2-page spread is really hard to calibrate to. And they did a great job at figuring that out. And just the balance of everything. No, I'm absolutely totally thrilled with this. This is my very, very first look at the proper printed edition of my book, and so you can grab that if you haven't already. You can grab that at skycrystals.ca. Now, is it all just the? I mean, look at how thick this thing is, Steve. This book is massive.
Well, Terrell said, "Intoxicating new book smell."
Yeah. I'm not sure exactly what those chemicals are.
And
just like
Stuart
that new car smell.
Awesome. It does.
You're
look
smelling
awesome.
chemicals.
I'm excited. I'm so excited.
So is this all the same edition? I am unsure. Let's dig through here.
So now we're going deep into the book.
No, that is. It's all of them are the same first edition or the regular edition of the book, which was unexpected. And actually, let's see how the footprint aligns. Again, sorry for the audio people. This is annoying. This is my first book that I'm holding up, Sky Crystals, which is out of print. And they're from different presses. I tried to get the dimensions to be identical so that they would sit next to each other nicely on a shelf. And
Rosas Gonzalez said, sniffing.
There you go. They make perfect alignment, top,
oh, nice,
and bottom. And you can see how much thicker the new book is.
I have the Sky Crystals poster back here that you sent me. I didn't know
Yeah, the
book.
snowflake poster. Yeah. My first book was I can move the camera back up here. The first book was produced in 2013, and that was quite the adventure to produce because the entire first run of that book needed to be scrapped. It needed to be reprinted from scratch because the press screwed it up. And I don't want to call out the press that did it right now because I'm in such a good mood for the press that did this one. I won't. The press that did this book, by the way, is Friesens out of Manitoba. And from my initial just kind of flip through of this publication, I am beyond words happy. I am just so thrilled that it turned out great. And I'm actually shocked that it's the regular edition because they mislabeled the box. That might mean that I don't get any early copies of the limited edition, which might come on Monday. That's when the whole shipment is arriving. And if anybody's curious, they can both still be ordered. The production run was overrun by a little bit for both the editions, so I have extra copies even still, and I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Where can they go to get the order? Say it again.
Okay, skycrystals.ca. You might want to put up the lower third that has that that in there as one of the URLs. But skycrystals.ca is where you can order the book. That's why the URL is kind of confusing because, well, this book isn't titled that, but my first book was. And so the limited edition has an extra 16-page encore chapter to it, which I was really hoping to see today, but well. I'm going to see them soon enough, and we are we're good to go. Now I can test my packaging sizes.
And I will tell you, there's a lot of people
else,
in the chat right now that are waiting on this book, and everybody is super happy about it, myself included. And Ivan said it's beautiful. Can't wait to receive mine. Gary said, does this mean since you got a box that's labeled special edition and it's not, that people are going to get swapped? Obviously not, because you're going to
I wish, Gary. Sure, I wish. Hey, you can always upgrade. You can send me a note and I'll send you a discount code or something. But I'm like a day or so away from locking down the addresses completely without changing anything, just because I've got to go through this logistical marathon now.
Right.
So,
well, congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Steve. And I can't wait to get some of these books out into the mail. Actually, this is a PSA to anybody doing anything creative. As photographers, we talk about registering your copyrights. That does not just apply to photographs. That also applies to books. So now that I have it in hand as a physical item, I will be registering the copyright of the book with the US Copyright Office. And I believe I can do the same thing in Canada. In fact, I have to send one to our National Archives as a part of them giving me the ISBN to produce the book. So just make sure that you register the copyrights to everything that you care about, especially something as precious as a book. And yeah, you've got to send copies of it, like physical copies of it, not just the digital uploads that you would normally have to for a photograph. But in this case, I think that is that's well worth it.
Well, like I say, there's a lot of people in here saying, like Mike just said, can't wait to be told mine's on the way. Jane is in here, was in the last live stream we did, really looking forward to mine. So yeah, this is congratulations. I know from talking to you behind the scenes what a process this has been. And I'm just super happy for you.
Thank you, Steve. Talk for another 30 seconds while I get this book off my lap.
Okay, I can do that. Gary said, looks great. Digital edition was good, but like prints, can't wait to hold the real thing. Totally agree. And to everybody, keep in mind, skycrystals.ca. You can head up there, find the links, download everything that you need, or, order everything that you need. And again, the poster, let me throw this up because you can kind of see it back other side. That poster, it's hard to see. It's kind of dark here. But that poster is the Sky Crystals Snowflake poster that Don sent me. And
that took, Steve, that poster print, by the way, that took 2,500 hours across 5 years to create.
Exactly. And there is a book, Sky Crystals. So if you want the collection, you can get both.
Unfortunately, the actual physical copy of Sky Crystals is out of print. I should have printed more copies, and I'm really hoping that I can get more of them in the future.
So everything I said is wrong.
No. I mean, you can get the ebook version of it, and the prints are still available. Absolutely, you're totally right on that. But this is a bit of a long preamble. I do want to get into the actual stories that we have for the day, for the episode. So story number one kind of comes in two parts, and sometimes I'll just kind of put a related story at the end, but I do want to tackle them both simultaneously here. And story number one, via Petapixel, is Netflix's Love is Blind show wants unpaid photographer for 5 weddings. In comparison, before we get into too many details of this particular story, the Days Inn Hotel is offering a $10,000 payday and free travel within the US to a talented photographer And I believe that they said somewhere in the article that it was for 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's 2 weeks. And when we get to that, I've got something to point out about that 2 weeks.
Sure. But there is such a, I guess, what would the word be, Steve? I'm at a loss for words. An exploitation of photographers for certain things, people wanting to, oh, can you work for free? We'll give you good exposure. Can you work for free? We'll put in a good word and maybe this will lead to paid work. Or, oh, this is going to put you at the top of your game. You're going to get in on the ground floor, whatever words people want to mince in order to get a photographer to work for free. And that's what Netflix is doing. And it bothers me immensely. I mean, as a photographer, as a professional that makes a living from the work that I do, whether it's selling books or whether it's just shooting product photography. I don't do weddings, so I can't really relate to that to an extreme amount. But I don't know of any wedding photographer that, oh, you get to be on a Netflix show, so you're going to work for free, would actually say yes to this. What are your thoughts from that angle?
Oh, I have so many. So first of all, we should stress the odds are that Netflix as a company does not know about this. This is a company known as Kinetic Content that is doing Love is Blind. It was a producer for Kinetic Content that reached out to a photographer for this. And for those that don't know Love is Blind, first of all, what a stupid premise of a show. The concept is love blind? It's 30 men and women. They meet for the first time in a speed dating-like format, except, here's the key, they don't even get to actually see each other until the guy's ready to propose. And then they do these weddings. It got 1.5 million views in the first 5 episodes and dropped down to 800 and something thousand. But the producer...
It's like having a bad movie that's really well hyped. Opening day is fantastic, and then it just drops off.
And then it tanks. The Kinetic producer, Natalie, contacted a photographer by the name of Megan Saul about being a wedding photographer. And here's what they said, because this is key. And again, this is a production company. Netflix may not know this, but...
Read it verbatim. I mean, this is important.
Yeah, it's for the end of this is just classic. So you would attend the weddings and take photos. We are doing all of the weddings at the same location. It would be 5 weddings in total. You would need to be available June 6 to 10. Times are to be determined as of right now. This would be an unpaid opportunity, but your photos would be used for promos in Us Weekly, People, etc. In other words, what they're saying here is it's not only unpaid, but they're thinking they're saying to her, but you're going to get exposure. But what they're really saying is it's not only unpaid, but we're going to use your pictures to promote a show we're going to make lots of money off of. And you're not going to get paid. And did you see her response?
Yes, but I also wanted to reiterate sort of another point in there is that not only is the photographer not being paid and not being properly used here, there's a missed opportunity where the photographer could be part of the show. They could be on-screen talent, and they could get even paid for that. And even if you're not, being on-screen talent on a show that's viewed by millions and getting your name out there with a lower third and maybe your website and you actually having your personality in front of people, that would have some level of value. But if it's just your photographs, and I've always been this way about imagery not surviving the same way as music or cinema, in that if your images are completely used out of context with you and your personality and you are your brand, then there's no connection back to you. Nobody's going to read a byline and find a name and find a connection there. You are your brand. And if your personality cannot shine through the work that you're presenting in this way, it is of absolutely no value whatsoever. So Steve, what's the response?
Okay. So first of all, to Megan Saul, fantastic. I love the fact, first of all, that you stuck by your guns, because there is going to be somebody willing to do this thinking this is fantastic. But the way they laid the response out, so I'm going to do this again as, a quote, as it were. Yep. What goes into, and this was not her response to them. This is something that they posted on a Facebook post. What goes into my work is not just my time, my artistic eye, or my ability to capture moments they wouldn't be paying me for. To give you a highlight, now listen to this list here, okay? Because this is absolutely
the gear list and everything else, and the team.
My camera gear, 35,000 plus any rentals I may need. My team, bare minimum 500 a day. This is one people don't think about, but you're going on a shoot. Insurance, $2,000 a year, but likely would need additional coverage for something like this. My attorney, because someone is going to need to look over the contracts, my editing time, my computer, my gas every day, food, and gosh, I'm sure I can think of plenty more expenses that go into what I do. And there's a point where she says something in this article, where they quote her in this article. And I wrote it down in all caps in my notes. Know your worth.
Yes. And I can't stress that enough. I mean, I get contacted by people all the time that want to use my work. And there's no mention in the email or the missive about payment. And so I hit back with, okay, it's going to cost this, that, and judging your worth is a really difficult thing to do.
It is, but it ain't this.
No, the thing is, I don't want to say I overprice myself, but for things that I don't really want to do, I'm more than happy to put a higher price tag on it because it's just not of interest to me. And if they still bite, well, okay, the higher payment is because I'm not going to enjoy the work. Right. And I think that a lot of photographers need to figure out exactly where they fall in a worth category, which I can't give you the answer to that question. You can read opinions from a dozen different photographers and maybe get a start as to where you would place yourself. But you have to come to that decision on your own. That brings us to that other story, the days in.
Before you go into the other story,
sure.
There's a couple of really good comments here. First of all, Terry said, yeah, I'll respect you in the morning. Exactly.
Yeah.
Arctic Penguin says, I work for a brewery and people are always trying to get free kegs of beer for exposure.
Hey, Arctic Penguin, if you want to give me the name of that brewery, I will shout it out on this podcast if I can get a free keg of beer.
Exactly. And Gary said, I think the producers are assuming more than the contestants are blind. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, there you go. No, I just wanted to take this into the days in offer. And you know what? 2 weeks pay. I mean, that's if you're a wedding photographer, that's 2 weekends, potentially during the summer when you are, fairly busy and your costs are going to be there. And $10,000, I know, like I paid just under 5,000, I think, for my wedding photographer for the weekend, and there was a second shooter and everything else. So 10,000 seems like a big number, but if you are a professional and you have all of these extra expenditures in what you're doing and your time, you're away from home and your family and any other obligations that you might need. I think it's good. I think it's fair. I don't think it's excessive or any kind of a windfall, but it's a fair number that a company has come up with. And the only reason why it's making headlines is because it seems like it is more than fair. Like it is benefiting the photographer more than it should be. But all of the equipment and all of the staffing and insurance and what have you, that I think this is a good deal for whoever gets this particular job.
First of all, there's a couple of things in here that are interesting, and I highlighted a part on the screen here. They're not even saying, they're being very clear. We're not necessarily looking for a working travel photographer pro, Canon Explorer of Light. They say they want, quote, an aspiring photographer and adventure seeker. So they're admitting they want what could be an amateur, right? But they're willing to pay that amateur. I think that is absolutely fantastic. The program is the Sunturn program. Sunturnship program. And let's be clear who it is. It's Days In by Wyndham for the Sunturnship program. But here's the thing that got me. In their quote, which is it's 2 week-long internship during which the Sunturn will explore some of America's most desirable locations and capture moments along the way. But the chosen photographer will head out on a, quote, customizable 2-week-long trip. So it's not even like they're going to pay you $10,000 and say you must go to Redwood City, California.
Or you must go to North Dakota.
Right. in
I mean,
January,
exactly.
right?
So
It's customizable to capture as many photos. And by the way, it's not just $10,000. We got to be clear about that too. There is a $250 daily stipend times
right.
14.
That per diem is quite nice, and so you know, and they say that they will plus benefits to travel. It's what they mean, and so they're probably going to cover any other incidental expenses that might come up. But why aren't more companies doing this? I mean, there's a lot of clandestine, draconian type of deals that I've seen. We talked about photo contests recently on another episode, and some of the rules in there basically are a rights grab. This is exactly the opposite. Well, it's let's be fair, it's probably a rights grab. I mean, they're owning the rights of the images that you take
We
in
don't know.
here, and
We don't know that it's work for hire. It probably is, but it may not be. But again, they're
it's
looking for an
it's
aspiring
unknown, but
photographer,
yeah,
so they are pushing that. You will have your photos featured by Days In, but you're also getting benefits from them beyond the money that don't cost Wyndham anything. You get Wyndham Rewards Diamond level membership. Normally, you got to put in some time to get that. You get,
yep.
quote, a glowing recommendation from a Days In by Wyndham executive, which, if you're an aspiring, new starting out photographer, you got a paid gig, a resume, and a referral.
Yep.
It's better.
I think that this is great. Days In deserves applause.
Better than what
You know,
Netflix is giving you.
absolutely. And so this is a polar opposite type of approach. And the thing is, there's a lot of stuff in between the two of these that you will encounter on a daily or weekly basis if you are trying to hang out your shingle as a professional photographer. And I've had people that have money and they can spend money, completely refuse to pay me even a nominal fee. Uh, and I'm not going to lower my rates to just kind of cheapen myself for somebody. If I come in for a nonprofit rate, I don't know what the rate would be, a couple of $100 for whatever it was. And I'm
Right.
making up a hypothetical scenario here, but I might have, if it was a for-profit endeavor, charged orders of magnitude more, and they still slap me down. No, I mean, a lot of not-for-profits have CEOs that are paid hundreds of thousands of dollars a
Oh, yeah.
year. There's money being thrown around at this, and I am the worthless party. Is that really true? No, it's not going to be. I'm not going to play that game.
We should probably say, and there's some good comments again. Unlike my last stream, I don't have a scene to set up to bring these on. But first of all, for Carl, he's saying that we're looking fuzzy. I'm guessing that's the internet connection. My stream shows really, really healthy on my end, but hopefully it gets better for you. But Gary said, always heard to price yourself so you can negotiate down. You'll never negotiate your price up, which is a really good point.
Well, Gary, I want to echo something on that point, though, because if you, I don't agree with this under promise and over deliver methodology, but if you add something to a gig that was unexpected and just a bonus that nobody was expecting, to increase the value of something that takes you no effort or time beyond something that is incredibly marginal, you'll have repeat customers. And when they come back to you, they'll say, well, can I have that extra thing again? And you say, absolutely. But, times have changed. Our prices have gone up a little bit. It's still very affordable,
Right.
but you know what you're getting now. And we're going to have this added into the package.
I used to call those 1%ers. Things, little extra things you do. And it could literally be somebody comes into your business and you've got Jolly Rancher candy sitting in a bowl that no other business, whatever. But here's a thing. If I ever do something that goes above and beyond what I promised, that's clearly something that should have or could have been billable, I'll invoice you for it. And I'll invoice you nothing. I will put,
yes,
I will
make it a line item.
So many hours. I'll put what the charge is. I'll let them know what it would have cost. And then I'll put a line, no charge above entry, as a gift, or whatever wording you want to do, because then they know the value. And here's the other thing it does beyond that. Nobody ever questions my invoices because they know I'm honest and they know I'm fair because they've seen me no charge them. It doesn't do you any good to no charge somebody and have them not know that you no charge
what
them.
It was going to cost. Exactly.
Right. So if you want to get in on this, by the way, you've got until June 1st. The info's up on the story. You got to submit a photo and a 300-word essay, and you got to be 21 or older.
And that'll be at photogeekweekly.com, where you can find the links for everything that we're talking about in the show notes. And let's go on to our next story. This is an interesting one, also
Oh
in
yeah.
two parts, sort of. The Ruha Cam is a retro-style digital camera made with a Raspberry Pi HQ as sort of the bones of it, the heart of things. And this is not the first time that Raspberry Pi cameras have been featured on the show. The I'm Back product from years ago would turn a Raspberry Pi into an image sensor for an old SLR. But this is a 3D printed camera, LCD screen on the back, and a single button. And it's not terrible. We talk about on this podcast periodically the joys and the lamentations of film photography and how the tactile experience of a simple camera can be nice, but I don't want to go through the laborious activity of necessarily developing and scanning film. And so this is an interesting product for me because it's two things. Number one, it has the retro and vintage feel to it. This is, you can 3D print it in plastic, but heck, if you want to go all out, there's a lot of companies like iMaterialize that can 3D print in precious metals. Even you can go that far. So it's got that retro feel, and you can get some heft, so some weight to it. As a result, the images are also not great. They won't be on par with anything that you'd get digitally. But that's also the nature of a film camera. So is something like this a Raspberry Pi powered, and yeah, maybe the design could be refined and revised and improved in some way to really amp up the retro styling, get some custom cut leather to stick on the various pieces and what have you. But I think this is, if you want to have the retro comfort and experience and yet have subpar to the modern digital cameras, which is, again, what you might get with film in a way. And you can battle this back and forth because it looks
Right.
like they're using C-mount lenses, which are very, very small image circles. And the Raspberry Pi is, we can talk sensor size versus, film size, and we can just spend an entire hour just on that. But let's talk about the experiential side of things, Steve. Is this a camera that to me, it either fills the niche perfectly or it obliterates the need for me even caring about that because it tells me how silly it is and I should just look elsewhere?
It can also be both. So
Yeah.
first of all, it's from Ping Soon Chen, otherwise known as Pink, and Rua Cheng. It's based on a Raspberry Pi 12.3 megapixel camera module. And I want to stress, okay, you're not going to go shoot a concert with a Raspberry Pi, but I have business clients, IT clients of mine that do jewelry, for example, jewelry repair. And they're setting up Raspberry Pi cameras with a photo light box and multiple cameras. They put a piece of jewelry, a watch, a ring, a bracelet, whatever in there. And before they repair it, they take pictures of it normally. And it used to be take one from the top, rotate it, take one. Well, now you're going to put a piece of jewelry in there, and these Raspberry Pi cameras are going to take at one click 12 photos and upload them into the database. These cameras are capable. They aren't great, but they're capable. It's built on a Raspberry Pi 0W, a Raspberry Pi camera module, and you are right, it's C and CS mounts. But what was shocking to me about this, and the reason I would play with one no matter what, even though it's just a little 3D printed, is A, they publish the 3D designs and the software so that you can do this yourself on GitHub. That's pretty cool.
Now, is the license, does it allow for modification to the design?
Yes.
I didn't.
Well, I shouldn't say yes. I didn't read it, but the article seems to indicate that yes, you can download it, you can modify it and build on it. And we're talking a 2.2-inch display. It'll be interesting to play with.
Yeah. Yeah. And, it's got
It is 35 millimeter too, by the way. I should say
that. You've got the Ruha name on the top on the nameplate, but if it's modifiable and you could remove that, and again, you'd have to read the license, but wouldn't it be fun to have your own name or nickname or something on the nameplate of your camera?
I think it'd be great.
I think it would be fun. Yeah, just for the enjoyment of that. I love weird cameras, and this is weird and both practical in terms of the camera itself. So it strikes a chord with me.
Think about this. You have a child. Imagine if you had I'm going to throw an age out. It could be 6 for all I care. But let's just say you have an 11-year-old. I sat down with my son when my son was young teen and built his first computer with him. Imagine downloading all of this, 3D printing it, and building a camera with your kid.
That would be fun. My daughter's 4.5. She's a bit young to truly appreciate what would be going on here. But I think that in the next year or two, maybe I should buy a 3D printer, and we could actually watch or check in periodically as the 3D printed elements are being created.
Exactly.
And then see how all of the different pieces come together. I mean, she's just got her first Lego kits right now, and she sees how, you can build something from parts that becomes greater than the individual components, the synergy therein. And so there we have it. But I'm also, Steve, a fan of weird cameras.
Oh,
I got a lot of them. I've got the Lytro lipstick model camera. Thank you to whoever sent me that one. Just as I've used it exactly 3 times, mostly just to show it off. I love those strange anachronisms of photography. I think Polaroid made this 4-up passport camera at one point as well. You could get instant passport photos, and you get 4 of them at exactly the same time from that camera. But there was one that came across my radar that I think is, I don't want to say it's as weird. It serves a purpose, but it's such a narrow niche purpose. And it is like bullet time in the film era with a point and shoot, nearly looking like disposable type of camera. And so this is from F-Stoppers, the weirdest camera I've ever seen, and why you should get one. Because who doesn't want to take 16 pictures at once? But not exactly at once. There is a very slight time delay between each of these exposures, because if you wanted to have a massively fast rate of fire for a camera, and you're talking about buying the special battery grip on a Canon A series camera in the film era, in order to speed up the rate that the film could run through it, or maybe Leica had this big giant magazine on some of their cameras, in order to just, I think they called it like the journalist model or something like that, where it would just be a massive spool that you could just constantly churn and churn, and the rate of fire would be massive. But those are expensive. Those are dedicated photography equipment. What if you were a soccer mom in the 1980s and you wanted to make the swing of the bat, the kick of the ball, the game-winning goal, whatever it is, as something that would be memorized forever on film? Well, you would need the Bayou-N16 Renchacardia from Fujifilm. Obviously, that does not sound like the name of a product that ever made it to North America, which is why I'd never seen it before. So what do you think about this thing, Steve?
I think it is fascinating as heck. And what I really love is the video that they have on here. The guy who made the video, which is Tyler Knoll, he does this thing where he goes out and he shows you the multiple shots that it takes, almost like an animated GIF, but he goes beyond that. So first of all, you'll see in these samples I'm playing right now, and hopefully they're streaming okay. They appear to be like they are streaming okay. Let me go full screen.
Coming through
fine. What you're getting here is there's a couple of different ways to do the post-production on this thing. And he talks about how to do all the post-production at the end of this video, which I think is interesting. He talks about how to keep the subject still, but have the background moving. Talks about how to keep the background still, the subject moving through it, based on just how you assemble the different shots that this camera takes. One thing that was interesting to me, though, so this thing was originally released in 1995.
95. I said 80s, but I was mistaken.
95, but it was an update to a camera from 91. And what was fascinating was he explained that each of the 16 lenses has their own shutter. It's not a single shutter. So they're all 20 millimeters. They're all f9.5, 16 different shutters, all always firing. You cannot change it at 2/50th of a second.
And so that means it's for action inherently. But it also, the lenses are not all in the same space. Obviously, they have to be in a separate physical location. Um, and that, as somebody that loves stereoscopic 3D work, I'm very keen on thinking, well, every one of those images is going to be from a slightly different perspective, even if the subject is relatively static. But they all fire at a slightly different time in sync. This could be a really cool technology, like even if it's just 8 of them in a row, because you've got
Right.
2 separate rows for lenticular printing, which
Oh,
you've seen the prints that animate when you move them side by side, or you walk by a billboard and you'll see one image of a movie poster change to another or something like that. That's lenticular printing. It's using a sheet of prisms to show your eyes a different view based on your angle of viewing it. Now, if you have 8 of those in a row, and they're all firing not at the same time, but at slightly different times, then that could be a really cool view of both motion and perspective as you see it from a different angle. That would be almost like altered reality that we would have on screens these days, but in 1990s technology.
and that's basically what it's doing. It's basically a movable photographic still 16 frame GIF or GIF if you prefer. What was really funny that I didn't catch until I watched the video is this part right here. Look at the logo that's on that camera. It
Golf.
is, you said it's sports. It is actually marketed, or was, to golfing, to catch a golf swing.
There you go.
Very, very fascinating what they chose to do with this thing. But again, even if you're not going to get this thing or try and find one, apparently they're hard to find, but they do come up now and then. Go watch the video because the guy goes super detail at the very end when he talks about how he assembled those sequences is very interesting.
And I want one. If anybody has one they're willing to sell me at a reasonable price, I
Totally
would
agree.
love to play with one of those things. And speaking of 3D, I was actually gonna check something out with my book, because there's a chapter in the book, to go back to that for a minute because I just love this thing. If I go to the very end of the book, I put in a chapter on stereoscopic 3D, and I made it such that I require you to use anaglyph red blue glasses. So I'm just, holy crap, that's it jumps right off the page. So I am happy about that. Yeah. Anyhow.
So yeah, interesting.
Very interesting. But that brings it to an interesting point. Photography can be motion. It can be a collection of images that depict something. It can be seeing things in 3 dimensions, as I just experimented with. It can
like
be,
this?
yeah, jumping right out at you, Steve. Yeah. But are all photographs lies? Is the title for the next story, and this is from Petapixel. And photography is the art of telling stories with light. Technically, the name would be drawing with light if you go back to the full literal sense of it. But I think that, is everything a lie? Is the better question about this, because yes, all photography is not the truth. If you think about what you exclude from a frame, it could be as meaningful as what you include. How you edit something to be restored from something old, from framing something with exactly the right words, how you light something, how you choose to accentuate certain features or hide others. There are certain areas of photography that I think are truthful or closer to truthful, and they might be insurance photographs from an unbiased third party. It's something that might come out of an X-ray technician, crime scene investigators, and their images. But even when you get to photojournalism, where it's supposed to be truthful, the person taking the picture has a bias of what to include and what not to include, and it thereby lends to truth, or a lens against truth, because we all lie, whether it's to hide the truth of somebody, to surprise them for a birthday party, or you don't want to hurt somebody, or whatever it happens to be. Human nature is to exclude information as
Right.
well as to provide it. And even if you decide something was 100% fact and truth, somebody might disagree with you with their own beliefs. And there's no truth in humanity. There is the belief of truth, but at one point everybody believed the earth was flat, and
Right.
going against
Well,
that
and many people
idea,
still do.
yeah,
Just gotta say.
and but going against the idea would be blasphemy, just about. I mean, it wasn't a religious fact per se, but so photography comes into this interesting space because we've given it truth in some contexts. We've given it pure abstract artwork in others. If you have a photo of your family from generations in the past, you want to look at that image and think that that's exactly how these people were. Well, maybe it was on a good day for them. Maybe it was on a bad day for them. What is the truth of their life in an image? So when truth comes to photography, do you believe it? Should we? This is the better question. Should we give the illusion of truth to photography more than we do to other art forms because it is documentary? Or should we just enjoy it all as art and interpretation and subjective looks at the world around us?
Okay. So, first of all, documentary, even to an extent, has issues because everything that is presented in front of a human is absorbed to some extent different than it was presented because we bring our bias, we bring our history, we bring our current mental state with it. I mean, the mood that we're in will affect how we interpret colors, for example. So everything can be misinterpreted, whether that's an intentional lie or not. It plays to fact. But here's one of the places I want to go with this, because I thought that this was fascinating, that when they first hit the article title, my mind went here, and they did too. Composition is composing a lie. And my answer to that is no, except when it is. Right? So anytime you take a shot, you pick a lens. If I choose a wide angle lens, I get more in. That may tell a different story than if I choose a zoom. So let's take an example. I'm going to make a scene up. A protest, a violent protest. So it would seem, because I shot it with a 200 and it's a tight shot. But in a wide angle, there was actually a marching band that lets you know maybe that was all staged as part of some play or something else. Both are real. If I only show you the tight shot of the altercation, you can interpret that as an altercation. But if I show you the wide shot with a marching band that's actually playing and there's no police, you may interpret that completely differently. So at its best, composition is misleading. At its worst, yes, it is a lie. Does that make any sense?
It does. And I think that we need to embrace the lie a little bit as
Agreed.
photographers, because it's not something that we should shy away from. In fact, the way that we remember things is a lie to ourselves about what those events particularly were.
What's the old saying? If a woman remembered everything about childbirth, she'd never have another kid.
Yeah. Right? Thankfully, we don't remember the intensity of pain, right?
Otherwise, we tend to remember the positive feelings and shut down some of the negative feelings. So I think you are right. But you said something in an email to me that was interesting. You touched on evidence, crime scene, and historical photos.
Yeah,
we know historical photos have been faked.
Oh, totally. And in this article, there's one, was it of Stalin, if I scroll down here?
Yeah, that was funny.
Yeah.
That was actually, I didn't know about that.
So, you get a political ally that you then turn on at some point, and you want to kind of erase them from history. Well, you know what? That seems like a modern, 21st century thing to do. No, it was a 20th century thing to do as well. And so, it's expert retouching work, especially for the era, and to lighten things up, to make the detail in the water less obvious so that you can't see that things have been brushed in. I totally get exactly why they chose that processing to lighten the image in that case. Well done. I hope the person that made the retouching did a good enough job not to also disappear off the face of the planet.
Well,
But
I have heard that there were Civil War photos that are considered historic until they found out that the photographer ended up moving subjects on a battlefield, dead bodies, guns, whatever, to put things in a scene that they wanted to compose. There's a photo in here as well. This is actually an interesting one where they showed two newspapers on different ends of the spectrum chose to crop a photo differently. But this one, this is a famous photo. Spanish Civil War. It's one of Kappa's. It essentially brought him to fame. It's somebody being shot and dying on the field, except it appears it was staged. So,
well, and appears. I mean, we don't have any direct evidence one way or the other that proves it. We have evidence one way and the other, but it's still inconclusive based on who you ask, right, and what historical recounts you can discuss. But the thing about that is, in either case, it's still a lie because it's excluding information.
Right.
But how factual is it based on what we want to believe it to be? And photography's always kind of rided this line. It's not art in the sense of you're not drawing something, you're not painting something. And even some artists, like Johannes Vermeer, was basically a photocopier. He invented photography before photography existed using a comparative mirror. And I encourage anybody to take a look at the documentary film Tim's Vermeer, wherever you can find it, where that work is properly recreated. And anybody with no artistic skill whatsoever can paint a Vermeer-like painting, so long as you have enough resolve to actually sit there and do it. But it takes no skill. So yeah, all art forms are a kind of lie. Photography has the illusion of being more factual because it's actually on the surface less artistic, but it has all of the elements of art that any other art form does. And the more of the art you embrace, the less truth you have in the end results. I think that's really what the answer is.
Well, and facts are facts. Presentation is subjective. Right. We absorb what's presented to us based on the colorization of our existence.
Yep.
That doesn't change. We may perceive it wrong based on what is a fact, but it is also a fact that we have the ability to perceive it wrong, whether it was intentional or not. So yes, all photos can be a lie and can be true. So the answer is no, except when it is.
There you go. That's clear as mud, Steve. Gary says in the chat, just as the written word is a photo, just an expression of opinion. And I believe that it is. Even if you try to be as unbiased as possible with a photograph, right, you are a human being. You inherently, by your existence, have a bias. And so we can't negate that. We have to embrace it. And I think that we all have to understand collectively that there is no perfectly true image. It's all there's something in the mix somewhere, whether it's what I choose in terms of a lens, which I think Mike said in the chat, even the lens is used right, that controls the depth of field and the field of view and all that. But even just how we perceive color. I mean, Steve, you're colorblind, right?
Yes.
So you will see an image inherently differently than I will. Yep. And I might see things in the photograph that you will not see, and vice versa.
And that, so the other thing is things don't end at a line. Yes, that is true. And therefore my pictures will be different. Now, I remember, while I may not see color the same as you, I remember how I saw it. I can color correct based on white point or whatever to an extent. But, for example, if I see, I've used this example on my show a million times, so if you've heard this before, I apologize, people, but if I see red apples in a green tree, I see the red apples, I see the green tree, but I don't see the color contrast as stark. Whereas somebody that's not colorblind will go, oh my gosh, that's red and that's green. They're completely different. Because I don't see that color contrast, I tend to process my images with more contrast, more real contrast, I call it, edge contrast, as it
Luminosity contrast.
luminosity contrast. And so, there's that. Another thing, there are photographers out there that, pride themselves and boast about, I never crop an image. To which my response is, yes, you do, because you chose a 24 millimeter lens.
And you chose a camera that has a 3:2 aspect ratio or a
exactly
4:5 aspect ratio or what have you. Yeah.
Here was the best lesson I ever learned. A friend of mine who's a lawyer, and we were talking about a Supreme Court decision, which, of course, I'm not a lawyer. I don't know what I'm talking about. But we're, talking about it because it was news at the time. And they said, this idea that judges are, are supposed to serve from the bench, unbiased, and rule purely based on laws. You can look at precedent after precedent that was based on what judges were sitting on a bench at what time. Again, we all bring a preconceived mental state to anything in front of us that we interpret.
Embrace it, people.
Yep.
And I also mean to not just in your work, but the work that you see of others. Know that it cannot be avoided. It is part of the human condition, and judge the world around you as it's been filtered through somebody else's perceptions. Unless you are the one visiting it or viewing it firsthand. And I think that's a really powerful thing to think about. And I think that we need to be reminded of that as creative people all the time. It's something that is not intuitive for us. We assume that there's a certain sense of realism to everything that we see, especially if it looks and feels real to us. And we have to remember that it is somebody else's version of the world that they want us to see, and we would not see the same thing if we were in the same position. That doesn't mean it's bad. It just means that it's more powerful that we understand and appreciate that.
And Gary solved it in the chat.
What did he say? Eliminate the humans. Problem solved. Gary, Thank you so much.
Boom.
And in the critique show that we did just before this, Gary mentioned that there should also be a dead body on a beach. So thank you for these wonderfully human recommendations, you robot of a person, sir.
All right.
Let's go on to our next story. Final story, again in two parts, this one. Just from stuff that I was finding along on the internet. I'm using a laptop right now, and it's doing a really good job as a desktop replacement for now. It's a Microsoft Surface Book 3. And I miss my desktop. I will build another one at some point. And I was looking at, the one story from DP Review, report that says TSMC, one of the biggest semiconductor manufacturers in the world, has started the production of Apple's next generation M series chipset. The M1 is out right now. We can assume it might be called the M2, but it is currently under production. While at the same time, we still have a big push on the traditional x86 side of thing that Apple is leaving behind. And they're embracing their own platform, but AMD is rumored to be launching their Zen 3 Threadripper 5000 series in August of this year, which these at least currently have CPUs that have 64 cores and oodles of features and bells and whistles, but a lot of the baggage of the x86 infrastructure. And so we've got these competing elements here. If you want to buy a computer, I have made mistakes buying computers. I have gone for the massive core count, which then generally relates to a lesser per clock or a lesser core speed per clock, a lesser clock speed per core. If I could speak properly, the words are coming out finally. And then that hurts the performance of things that are only single threaded, and a lot of things still are. Even though I bought it was a 12 core system with 2 processors, so it had 24 cores in total, and nothing really fully utilized it. Props to Helicon Focus, the focus stacking software, for actually using everything the system had, but nothing else really did. So is it time that we think differently? Apple obviously has decided so, and they have segmented their chips not just to be, oh, well, you can have 32 of something, but some things that are very specifically different, and different clocks all working together, different portions of the chips that do very, very specific things and only do that one thing that may never need to be used in certain. Uh, where are we right now, Steve? Is my next computer, and this is a very serious question, is my next desktop computer going to be an x86 computer, a processor, or is it going to be ARM, M, whatever else, because it's time for change?
So that's a really good question. And the answer is, if you're a PC user, it's probably not going to be ARM anytime soon. But at some point it will be. So, the Intels of the world and the AMDs, and Intel specifically, Intel has had trouble getting down in die size. Whereas, the M1 is a 5 nanometer. The M2, or whatever it's going to be called, it could be an M1 Plus, could be a number of different names, is 5 nanometer, right? Intel's not near 5 nanometer yet. They've had trouble with that. So
they're not even at 7, really.
No,
for their
exactly.
Heavy hitters.
But here's the thing. First of all, we got to understand the M1 Apple Silicon for the new iPad and the newer Apple Silicon MacBooks, MacBook Airs, MacBook, etc. That chip's only 6 months old, but it's not like it's new. It effectively is an A14 or something of those generations, and the A series chips that have been in phones for 10 years, licensing the ARM command set. But these are custom built chips. And for example, if you look at the diagram of this thing, it's onboard memory, the GPU, the CPUs, the HDR imaging, Thunderbolt controllers, all of those are built into this chipset. So again, yes, they're ARM instruction sets, but I wouldn't think of them as ARM in that sense. And in the PC world, you don't have anything
licensed. Licensed from ARM, are you saying, Steve, that now would be a good time to invest in ARM as a company?
It's an interesting question. The question is, we don't know yet. Here's the question we don't really know yet. We are assuming that the M2, and the whole reason this report is out is because the M2 reportedly is in mass production. It's a 3-month cycle to get to quantity, which means they're assuming that they could ship machines. The chips could ship in July for machines like MacBook Pros that could come out in the fall, because the chips would be July, not the machines. Yeah. Whatever it's called, M2, M1 Plus, whatever. But what's key to remember is they have not released an M series chip for a Pro machine yet.
Yes.
Are they going to go beyond 8 cores? Are they going to do 16 cores? What are they going to do to get it to speed? When you compare that with what you said with the AMD Zen 3 Ryzen, the Threadripper 5000, that is an x86 chipset, tried and true, but long in the tooth at this point.
Yeah,
I don't know what's going to happen. It's going to be fascinating to watch. It's a wonderful time to be alive.
It is. The x86 architecture has been built on, like, a lot of code, so long as it's not using any of the special instruction sets, can run on a 386 if there's enough memory, right? And it'll just run super slow. But that type of backwards compatibility serves absolutely no purpose whatsoever. And, you have some of the inside elements of even Adobe software, even in Photoshop on the x86 side of things. Some of the innards of that software carry so much baggage. And I think I've referenced like the actions panel and other things. Like if you go deep enough beneath the surface, you see stuff that has UI configurations from decades ago that doesn't make any sense right now whatsoever. And so by allowing the software to continue to be built up on that same very aged and cracking foundation, we don't really see the same amount of innovation on the software side of things either. But at the same time, we have this backwards compatibility. We have this stuff that just always works. And if you learned how to use those tools 10, 20 years ago, and you're kind of stuck in your ways, and it's muscle memory for you now, you don't have to relearn it, because it's always going to stay the same. So
here's the thing though. If we were to go with more of an ARM style SoC in PCs, Macs, mobile, whatever, That's great, because one thing is true. The M1 chip that is, for example, in the new iPad even, is a beast. Not just on a spec sheet, not just on benchmarks. These things are proving to just rip through video processing.
Yeah.
Software has to be rewritten to be native, but there's a lot of potential here. I personally, now I'm a Mac user, but I do IT, so I work on PCs. I personally would love to see the competition and this type of chip open up, across the world. But here to me is the big takeaway about these stories. What the heck, Intel, right?
Yeah,
Intel
where is Intel?
had this.
AMD is really killing the x86 market right now, especially in the high end. But Intel was famous for selling their chips for thousands of dollars in order to eke out an extra 5% of performance.
I remember the days when Apple would strike a deal with Intel, and a new Intel chip would come out in a Mac first because they were going to buy them all. And, Tim Cook has always been well known as a supply guy and, buying everything up in advance. But the fact that to this day, we've been saying for 2 years probably that, where's Intel's 5 nanometer? Where's their 7 nanometer? Right?
Yeah, I think they're still at 10 for
and then they had the huge security issues that were in chip, where they had to cripple chips to counteract some of these different security issues.
Spectre and Meltdown.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And their fix was, it reminds me of the old Mac OS 8 and OS 9. Intel's fix has been throw more cores, throw more cores, throw more cores, throw more cores, and then you end up with heat issues.
Well, and you also end up with software inefficiencies where, you have to be very, very good at designing software in order to be N-core optimized, to say, hey, I can work great on 1 core. How about 4? I can work fine there.
Right.
How about 45? No, I'm good at 4. Well, and then what's the point of having the extra 4?
That's the thing with the ARM. They run super cool. They run super fast. You can have multiple cores. I think it's the way of the world. Gary just said Intel has become Motorola.
Oh, wow. The 6800s.
Wow, that's an insult.
Yeah.
So yeah, okay.
All right. Well, that brings us to the end. That puts that story to bed. Thank you, Gary, for that commentary. But we still have Picks of the Week. Before we get to the Picks of the Week, however, Steve, where can people find you online and your podcast?
So the easiest way to find, first of all, I'll start with the podcast. The podcast, you can find at behindtheshot.tv. My stuff, my photography, you can find at my website, which is stevebrazel.com. It's like the country Brazil, but it's 2 L's. On Instagram or Twitter, it's at Steve Brazel or at Behind the Shot TV. Facebook, it's Steve Brazel Photography or Behind the Shot TV. And that's probably the easiest place to find me. For me personally, I'm not on Facebook anymore. The pages are still there. There's some things that auto-post. But I do Instagram still, and I live on Twitter. I really love Twitter. So that's the easiest thing.
All right. Well, we'll find you there. And again, those links are also found at photogeekweekly.com in the show notes. Let's get into the Picks of the Week. I think we're both tripod oriented this week. I'll go first. I got this this little thing here. This is it's a Novoflex. It's actually a combination of 2 of their products, and the connection name that they call is the Microstative, which is the Micropod as a tripod and a ball head. And this is a unique little creation. I use a lot of tabletop tripods in my work doing macro photography, and they're almost always either stuck in storage or they're out for a long period of time. But the legs end up getting a little bit wobbly and weak, and the heads on them, like the Manfrotto Pixie tripods that I've used for a long time, they are not really that solid and secure and not nearly as flexible as this. These legs, by the way, they can come out. They physically are removed and could be placed back in to a central component.
Whoa, hold on. Are they magnetic, or do they come out that easy?
Well, they don't come. I'm actually using some force. There's a little gasket on the side of it. And so that gasket makes it so that it'll stay in place for any type of that. Magnetic would be interesting too, but it might be hard to get them to align properly. Anyhow, so that's a pretty easy way to get that to work. And that's just the Micropod base, but also of, at least to me, interest is the head on this. which is a separate unit. You can buy them separately. You can buy them together. As a kit, it's just over $67, which seems like a fair amount for a little tabletop tripod because I can buy them for 20. But I want to live in the lap of luxury here. Number one, the ball head has full motion and it also goes into a vertical position, which is great. When it's loosened, it will also spin on its base, which is also wonderful.
So it's the same knob for ball head loosening and spinning?
Yep. Same knob. So you make your adjustments and then you just tighten her up and then she's good. But even when it's fully tight, this top plate, it's kind of hard to see here, will still rotate. And so that when you tighten something onto that, it'll continue to tighten and tighten and tighten with it. So what that means is it will get one of the tightest connections against that surface that you could have. So things will not move on a small, tiny little ball head like this. Now, I'm not going to put, I mean, yeah, you know what? I actually could put a Micro Four Thirds camera on this. I think that would be a fair connection to have those two things at play. I wouldn't put a full frame camera on a tiny little ball head like this. It actually
says, I've got the website up here, and it actually says on the website that it supports 6.6 pounds.
I'm not going to doubt that, but it just becomes a little bit unwieldy in terms of balance, not just in terms of weight. But when you have a small tripod like this, the balance is better for a smaller camera because things can get a little bit topply if you've got a big lens coming out in one direction, and then it's not going to work so well. But as something to hold lights, as something to put a Micro Four Thirds or any other smaller compact camera on. I was using these for some of my most recent tabletop macro setups that I was doing in my studio. I loved them. And you know what? Novoflex as a company, I'm kind of taking a liking to them. They just make really good quality stuff. And you pay a little bit more for that, sure, but I haven't been disappointed yet. So that's my pick.
Nice product, and definitely looks interesting. The price is actually pretty amazing too.
Novoflex is usually a much higher priced item. Like I've got their Castel Micro automated focusing rail, and it's something like €1,800 for the thing. And you know, it is the best focusing rail that I've ever used, but there's a law of diminishing returns. You know, the other ones that I've used that were also fantastic were half the price. And so, yes, in that case, that becomes like a Ferrari type product where you've got a little bit of extra performance with a lot of extra cost, but they also make things that are quite nice and affordable.
Michael, Michael just came in and said, "Did I miss the unboxing?"
You missed the unboxing, Michael. The unboxing was at the beginning. So here is my new book as well. You can go back to the beginning and you can see all of the wonders of whatever page I'm snowflakes right there to see how that came together. So, but also, hey Steve, go back to my single shot there. I want to illustrate, and you can kind of see it right now. The cover of the book has spot gloss on it, and if you get the angle just right, you'll see that the seed head, I had the angle a second ago there. I don't know where it's going. But the seed head itself is reflective. And I will have to set this up in the studio to actually get this to, there you go, a little bit. But the seed head is going to be glowing and reflective and what have you. I just don't have the lights at the right angles to get that to work right now. Anyhow, I digress, Steve. Give me your pick of the week. I believe it has something to do with a company that I've had good things to say about, and you might not.
I actually, well, it's a mixed bag. So first of all, the product that I've got is from a company called Moment. You might recognize the name Moment. They are known as probably the best mobile lenses that you can get. So you buy a Moment case, you put the Moment lenses on it. They're very high-end lenses. They're very good, and I have heard nothing but amazing stuff about this company. So when they came out with MagSafe gear, MagSafe type attachments, I was like, well, that sounds interesting, and they've got a bunch of them. They've got a wall mount that you screw on the wall and can mount your MagSafe, iPhone to. They got a car vent. I ordered one of those. It's preparing to ship now. They've got a cold shoe with MagSafe. They've got a normal tripod mount. They have a landscape-only mount, and then they have this one. And this is what I bought. This is a Pro tripod mount with MagSafe. And I will tell you, as soon as I got this thing, I mean, literally as soon as I got this thing, I went, oh, this is going to be nice. And as you unbox it, I'm going to try and stay on mic as I do this because the mic's not in the right spot. But it comes in a nice package. This is the first unboxing I've done on a camera. Comes with a little card that shows you, how it's used. And this is the actual device. And it is really, really well built. I mean, I am shocked how well built it is. Now, this is the portrait mode where you screw it in here and you've got a cold shoe here. But if you undo this knob, you can then rotate it so that you could mount the phone any orientation that you want. And
Very cool.
I will tell you, this thing is, $60? And I have been extremely happy. I haven't used it yet. I'm using my old little, accordion clip type that you got to pry apart and put the phone in.
You got one of those.
That's why I got this, because I'm using my iPhone as this down camera right here. I mean, literally, this is my iPhone that you're looking at shooting this shot. And I wanted an easier way when something happens and I need to grab my phone to just grab it off the magnet and not, what happens? You end up hitting the lock buttons and taking screenshots and putting it to sleep instead of having your camera. So this was awesome. I had some issues with the order. So I pre-ordered this, and I pre-ordered the car vent as well. And my thought was they were supposed to come in March. Then I got an email that they were delayed, end of March. Then I got an email they were delayed till April, end of April. Delayed till May, end of May. Then delayed till June 14th. And I'm like, well, this
we're
wasn't
not June 14th yet, Steve. So
well, and that's the thing. I'm like, this wasn't Kickstarter. I mean, I understand if you go to Kickstarter, you're backing something that maybe is still in development. This was a pre-order of a product on a company webpage. My assumption was that you're ready to go. I'm pre-ordering it and you'll ship it when you get it. But okay, it gets delayed. So then I go look at their website. Well, the car vent was still on back order. This thing was available to ship the next day. And so I emailed them. And I said, I don't understand. I'm an early backer, right? I'm backing your product before you've got it available. Those are your evangelists. And when are you going to ship this? Well, we can't ship them separately, and the car vent is still on back order, so you have to wait for this. In other words, they don't have a way in their database to mark that they did separate box, as soon as possible shipments. Which I get.
Yeah, you know what? But no, but you shouldn't get that, because even some of the most commonly used systems like WooCommerce, which is what I use, it might be a plugin that you have to use in order to separate things. And the cost of that is what? Like the most I've ever paid for
I don't care if you have a custom
is
database.
$100.
You could have added a field to the database to make a note. This item's been shipped. This one hasn't. And they should have jumped on that. But okay, you didn't. Their response to me was, well, we can cancel the one item that is available out of your original order, but keep the other one so you don't lose your place in line for the car vent. And then you go order again on the website for the one that'll ship the next day. I'm like, okay, cool.
Why do you have to jump through these
Well,
hoops?
and here's where it got weird. So I went and I ordered this, had it in 2 days. Emailed back, because they sent an email. They responded to my email saying, yeah, just let us know if you want to do that and we'll do it. I emailed them, nothing. I emailed the next day, nothing. Over the next 7 days, I emailed 6 times. No reply. I'm like, great, I'm going to end up with 2 of these darn things. So I went, and keep in mind, on their website, they have hello@shopmoment.com. It's the same email I'm emailing to. I go to the website, fill in the form, send a thing going, I've sent 6 emails. This is number 7. You haven't replied. She answers back and says, we've removed the item. We'll refund it. And you can order, you've already ordered the other one. We're good to go. And didn't apologize or anything, which I thought was kind of weird. But within 2 minutes, the original $86 charge showed up again on my card. And is still 3 days later pending. Now, I'm guessing that's going to disappear, but it was a little uncomfortable. So I emailed them saying, why'd you charge my card the full original invoice amount again? I have never heard back on that. I tagged the CEO on Twitter to see what he would do, told the story and said, this is not the reputation your company has. Still no answer on that.
And I'm glad I'm giving you my soapbox for this here, because I've got some of their cases and lenses. Like my phone right now has a Moment case on it, and it's a nice case. And I went totally hipster and I went for the wood grain, because why wouldn't you do that?
Right.
But you know, and I've got their macro lens, and there's actually an image in my book that was taken with that. But I haven't found any issues with them, but only because I never had a problem to solve. If I had a problem that needed any type of human interaction, I might be in the same shoes as you by your description of how to handle those.
I'll stress, this is to me the salad bar issue. It's not so much a complaint, because I will tell you, this product is built. This is solid. I love this, and I am excited to get the car vent, which is now preparing for shipment. It apparently isn't going to be June 14th. I just got the email today. It's more like in a restaurant, if the salad is brown and you tell the manager, it may not be a complaint. It's just like he can't address it if he doesn't know. Yeah. And so my understanding of Moment, let's be clear, is they're a fantastic company. They make great products, is my understanding. My first interaction with the company was not pleasant, and I question if I will make another order with them, simply because they didn't communicate.
And if they don't come back to you right now and express very apologetically what happened, then I don't see why your opinion should change.
It probably won't, which is sad, because this thing is a tank, man. I mean, this thing is nice.
Yeah, it looks great, actually. And I've got the MagSafe, the charger on the back of the phone that I just kind of plop it down on my nightstand, and then I can pick it up in the morning, and it's perfectly fine. It actually doesn't work very well with the case on, and I want to see people design phone cases with the little hole insert that makes it a lot easier to just make that happen. And I don't think at least we weren't there when I bought the case. Maybe they exist now, but maybe I won't buy one from Moment if they do, because.
And this particular thing is available now. It ships the next day generally. Like right now it says order within the next 21 hours to ship tomorrow, and it's $60. And I will tell you, for $60, I have taken it out and attached my phone to it, but I needed to use the old mount to be able to show it. But I will tell you, it is the strongest magnet I have ever felt on a MagSafe. It is super solidly built. I cannot wait to swap this into the position that my other mount is in right now. So I recommend this product. And I got it within 48 business hours when I ordered it the second time. But, and again, this may sound weird, but it's my belief that the people who back your products early are the people who will evangelize your products. And to say to them, you're going to wait until June for this, where Dawn could just stumble across the website, order it today, and have it in 48 hours, that's just not good business. It's not, again, not a complaint so much as bad business.
I have a lot of books I need to ship, Steve, and so I've kind of entered this bit of conundrum right now, because I've got some retailers that want to stock it too, and it wouldn't take me much to ship like a couple of boxes of books to B&H or to the camera store, and I will do that, but I'm not going to do that before everybody else gets their book. Right? Because I mean, I could easily do that day one, but then I don't want somebody going to B&H. And honestly, if you want to buy the book, I don't want to say don't buy it from them, because I want to get a nice relationship from them. But if you already have a relationship with me, buy it from me, because as soon as you put middlemen in the mix, your retailers, they take significant profits off of things. I mean, they're in the business to make money.
People in the chat have said, I wonder if their support is farmed out or understaffed. And they clearly state they don't have a phone number because they're a small team. But therein also lies the rub, and that is when I saw another $86 charge, and I'm like, well, it was supposed to be a refund. Now, the refund has showed up. The $86 charge has been pending for 3 days. My guess is it will disappear, but I can't call somebody. And that was weird. Anyway, so that's it. I recommend the product, though. It's beautifully built.
And I was just saying, like, for my own perspective, that the logistics of things, I'm going to be shipping the books, I think, to a lot of overseas backers that all just were part of the Kickstarter campaign. I'm going to send out a whole wave of those, you know,
Yep.
to Jane if she's still on the call here in New Zealand or wherever else, because it's just going to take a long time for them to get there.
Right.
And then I'm going to, as soon as that's done, I'm going to do a hurrah, you know, sort of parade around my own town and surrounding areas and just drop off books on doorsteps because I can do that and make people happy. And then the order in which they were received
Yep.
at that point. So that's the plan. But thank you for the pick, Steve. That was a good pick. I might have to get one of those actually because I'm in the same scenario as you. You know, like I've got this one camera, but if I want to show something, I mean, I did the unboxing with the same camera, and I'm kind of glad I did because my desk is nowhere near as clean as yours. Um, but
I should show you the wide shot, but I literally, that's just a piece of wood I bought and I stained, and it works great under this
there
lighting.
you
It
go.
doesn't work too bad.
It could be a charcuterie plate for all I can tell, based on the framing. But Steve, thank you very much for being on this episode of Photo Geek
My
Weekly, this
pleasure. Is
very
always fun.
special episode. And thank you to everybody that has listened, those that have backed my book, those that are just fans of the podcast and are listening to yet another episode. We are at the end of this one. So, Steve, people can find you at Behind the Shot. Where do you want, like, right to the website or the YouTube channel? Where do you want people to go? And of course, I'm at doncom.ca for my portfolio and my links. Skycrystals.ca is where you can buy a copy of my new book if you haven't done so already. And photogeekweekly.com, obviously, for the show notes of this podcast. Thank you, everybody, for being here. This has been a wonderful episode, one of the longest running. We are nearly at an hour and a half.
Sorry about
Thank
that.
you for hanging it. It's all right. It's my fault. Thanks for being here, everybody. It's now time to stay in and shoot.